parenthood, before anyone tells you about it, comes like a bit of a car crash when it comes to independence. I remember having my first child, who's now 6 years old, and you suddenly are bound by their rhythms and routines, which obviously in the early days are absolutely bonkers. For me, I think I mentioned, I think I have always just had such an appetite for responsibility. I always say I've sort of quite lucky in that I've never had any doubt about whether I wanted children or not.
Because we've got this vision of how we think we should be doing it, and again, we're working like we don't have kids, and parenting like we don't have jobs, and it's just there are only so many hours in the day.
You know, it's obvious, but everyone's saying don't wish away the early days, but really there's no point in wishing them away because they go so fast anyway. You've just got to embrace it if you can and get through it.
This is The Modern Load. Every week I sit down with someone to explore how they were raised, how they're raising now, and what modern parenting really feels like behind closed doors. Because the mental, emotional, and practical load we carry today is different, and naming it is the first step to sharing it. This week, I'm joined by Antonia, who is Chief of Client Experience for And Digital, working with big brands like British Airways and Heineken. She's also the founder and sponsor of And She Can, a grassroots initiative at And that aims to inspire women of all ages into tech careers. And most importantly, she's a mum to 2 girls, aged 6 and 3. So, Antonia, I know you grew up in a household of 9. That's pretty unusual. Tell me what it was like growing up in that family.
Oh, what was it like? I think it was probably an equal balance of chaos and loads of fun as well. So there were 9 of us, but I suppose we were lucky enough at one time there were 6 of us living together.
Yeah.
And lots of personalities in the mix. I don't really remember a lot of discipline, but a lot of fun and a lot of chaos, like I said.
And how did that play out in terms of gender roles and what you saw modelled from who was doing what in the household and the load that we might identify with today?
Yeah, it was, I suppose, a more traditional setup. So my mum was a full-time working mum. I think you have to be when you've got 6 kids in the house. And that was the way I grew up. She was very involved with everything we did, from school drop-offs to dinners to, everything that would happen in the household. And my dad was always away working. So he was an entrepreneur. He did lots of different types of things in the timber industry. So didn't often see him, but I don't remember that being absent. When he would be back, he would be around. And I've got some fond memories of that. But it really switched at a point in time where we ended up, for various reasons, actually sort of losing the money that we had at the time. So my mum was forced into work. And that was a really different dynamic because I'd grown up with my mum not working, wanting to be a full-time mum. In fact, I remember active conversations where my dad would say at the dinner table, Muzzy, which is what he calls her, Muzzy, not to work, you don't work, you're at home. And that felt right at the time. That's what my mum wanted to do. But then when she needed to work, she was super brave and just pulled her socks up and did it. And we're talking about a woman who's been brought up in that traditional way herself, where women didn't necessarily work. And she just got to it. So in a way, that's when the roles started to really merge and almost switch. My dad still worked, but it was necessary then for my mum to also dig in. And I think I said to you, the thing that changed at the table was things like suddenly chicken char grills and chips were the things that we had for our dinner rather than home cooked meals. But, as kids, we absolutely loved it. So it was all good.
And did that sounds like a real shift for you as a child within that environment, but was that empowering for you to see your mum taking on a different role, or did it destabilise kind of what you'd grown up with in the house and what you were used to?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's only when you ask me as an adult those questions that I even think about it. At the time, it was just a switch in the dynamic. And actually what my mum was really good at, whether it was true or not, was putting on a really brave, confident face. So I knew that she was going out to work and actually she really enjoyed it. And that's what she did really well. She would sort of, she was working at the airport as one of those people who would go along the queues checking people in. And for some people who hadn't worked before, that might not seem like the glamorous job she made it out to be. So I just remember her getting dressed really proudly in the morning, putting on her uniform and really grabbing that role for what it was and enjoying it. So the shift itself was just that, like I said, the meals changed and the rhythm slightly changed at home. But actually, I just remember it being positive and just what was needed to do. And actually, I appreciate that now, thinking about it. It was just, there was a problem to solve. she solved it. And so I suppose that was inspiring, but there was never a massive fuss made of it, which was also kind of cool looking back.
Yeah. And interesting that sort of change in financial setup as well. I'm interested in how that might have shaped your views on like how you wanted money for yourself and what you thought about that.
I think it's underpinned the way that I've approached everything. So, you know, we went from, and again, I know this sounds, you know, probably privileged in the way that I'm describing it, so I kind of caveat that, but you know, we went from getting a bit of pocket money every month and then slowly realizing that the pocket money wasn't coming through, and we'd sort of ask Dad where that was, and then it would get a bit awkward, and I realized at the point when it was becoming awkward, reminding him that we were owed our £5 pocket money for the month, that I was just like, okay, not going to do that. I actually just want to be independent and not have to ask for that. So I think that was just a very small thing, but quickly like led me to wanting to you know, actually just do things for myself. And so I think something that I've always grown up with is like, I've got like a real appetite for responsibility. And I see that as a really, really good thing. So I've worked from very young. And then I think, you know, post uni and so on, I have never stopped grafting, I'd say. And I say that again in no hard terms. It's like absolutely what's, I think, made me successful. But underpinning it all is wanting to be financially stable, definitely.
Yeah, I really resonate with that, and sort of grew up in an environment myself where if I wanted that money and I wanted to do things and I wanted to buy things, I had to go and get that for myself. So I think it does instill this like really intense fierceness, I think, to go out and get money and do it for yourself, and it's not just going to come to you.
Definitely. But also, didn't you find there was like a really cool independence about it? Like I remember at sixth form when, again, I was one of the only few kids who would work every weekend and a few nights in the week as well. And really reflecting on it, I didn't actually need to do that. Like what money do you need as a kid, really? But by doing that, I could go on holidays and I could pay for things at home, or I could get clothes if I wanted to. I actually ended up saving quite a bit. But, you know, I think the thing is that having that purpose and then having a bit of money just help you get freedom and independence.
Yeah.
So I think that's what really attracted me, as much as the sort of, you know, underlying wanting to be financially stable. It's more like that freedom it gives. I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, it's that choice piece and like autonomy and agency, which I think are like important values we've connected on before.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Cool. And how about like your siblings and stuff then? How did it impact them? What was your relationship like with them in the household?
In terms of the financial switch?
Yeah, and also just like what they've gone on to do, and obviously it's impacted you in a certain way, but you were the youngest of 9. I'm interested in how it played out for kind of other people in the house. Really
good and interesting question, and I think over the years I would have answered that in a number of different ways. I think I'm just learning about this idea of intergenerational experiences and how different that is. And actually, I think if you asked each of my siblings, they would come up with a slightly different answer. And I think the privilege that I've got of being the youngest of the 9 of us is that I've been able to look up to all of my siblings all of my life and see how they're taking something and adapting and learning from it, or not, as the case may be. And that's been really inspiring to me. So on the one side, I have some elder brothers who are very commercially minded. And then on the other side, I've got some sisters who are much more left-leaning and liberal. And in a way, we all just grew up through that circumstance of the finances switching. And we've had to grapple with the changes that led to in both our circumstances, in terms of what we could and couldn't do as a family. And then I think the hardest bit is really now as we're adults, like how do we now support our parents? And that definitely leads to tension between us. And it is based on those ethics around like what we should and shouldn't do, what we should and shouldn't be responsible for. So yeah, not always easy to navigate, but I'd say they've inspired me equally to sort of listen and learn and adapt depending on what you think is the right way to approach things. And I think that's okay too. We're all individuals.
Yeah, I think so too. So you've had this fierce drive for independence very early on. How did that kind of play out when you then became a parent? Like, tell me about your journey into parenthood.
Oh, how has parenthood affected my independence? I think parenthood, before anyone tells you about it, comes like a bit of a car crash when it comes to independence. I remember having my first child, who's now 6 years old, and you suddenly are bound by their rhythms and routines, which obviously in the early days are absolutely bonkers. I remember like night becoming day, day becoming night, and suddenly you're like, oh my God, like how do you even get out of that cycle? And then when you get out of the sort of, mist of having a newborn, you can start to see how you can get bits of your independence back. And for me, I think I mentioned, like, I think I have always just had such an appetite for responsibility that that loss of independence for me was just the underbelly of having this whole new world of responsibility, which I really, really wanted. I always say I've sort of quite lucky in that I've never had any doubt about whether I wanted children or not. And so I think because I felt like it was a real choice, it might have been earlier than I'd expected, but I was actually quite up for that. And then, having the voice of other parents around me and my sisters to reassure you that it gets a bit better, it gets a bit easier, things change and adapt, but you get that. So I think I've had that as a bit of a comfort blanket as well, knowing that, eventually you get your independence back. And what I would say now with a mum of 6 and 3, oh my goodness, I feel like, and this is why when we connected, I was like, yes, I've got some new energy to do some other things outside of being a mum and outside of my day job. You do get it all back again. So it's sort of like, it's obvious, but everyone's saying don't wish away the early days, but really there's no point in wishing them away because they go so fast anyway. You've just got to embrace it if you can and get through it.
Yeah, it's all a moment in time, isn't it?
A moment in time, yeah.
How did you, I'm super interested in that transition, I guess, and how you approached work, and you had a big job in your hushold, and the kind of dynamics between you as a couple. How did you navigate all of that?
Yeah, I think fairly well. I think my husband would say the same. But what I would say is almost ignorance for us was bliss. I think it was only when I was pregnant and then you get into the logistics of, when I go back to work, we need nursery care, for example. And we live in kind of central London. And when you start to realise what the cost of nurseries are and the logistics around it, like we work very regular 9-to-5 jobs, and yet it was still pretty hard to be able to get from zone 2 to our office within the pickup times for nursery, and then without the kind of noise from your mother in your ear saying, are you really going to plug them into nursery for all that time? And even my sisters put quite a lot of pressure on me, I'd say, around that, so are they really going in full time all the time? And you're like, I mean, yes, because I don't know what else you're expecting me to do. So it's sort of, I think, navigating actually the reality of what it takes to be a working parent, and then navigating the guilt around what you have to do to be a working parent, and then navigating that guilt in terms of is that the right choice for our family? Yeah. I think that's what took the time for us. But as soon as we had it nailed, I'd say for the first child, I was much more confident for the second in terms of, look, this is how it works. This is what we need to do. And then figuring out the little tips and tricks that work for your family, I think, is also really key. So, for example, drop-offs would always be my thing that my husband could do because he works in retail. So again, he's got very set hours, whereas I could be slightly more flexible in the afternoon, so I'd do the pickups. So it's just small little things like that. I think the thing that is then quite interesting is when the camel breaks the straw's back. No, the straw breaks the camel's. What is it? The straw breaks the camel's back. Breaks the camel's back, because I think most parents I talk to, and again, for context, this is probably London working parents, where most people are 2 working parents in a household. Once that straw breaks, it is an absolute shit show. So it is sort of, we're all working on very finely balanced plans and infrastructures. And so I think getting used to that and being comfortable that that's how it is. And the same goes for work. You go to work, you do your thing, and then you just try and figure it out, don't you, every day. So it's just getting used to that sort of almost chaos, getting used to the chaos, and then you realise it's cool. Loads of people have done this before us. Yeah. We'll figure it out. It's not that bad.
Yeah. And those margins are really tight, aren't they? We're finding this from research and conversations we're having with parents, that actually if you can just alleviate half an hour a day, an hour a day, the perception of ability to actually go and do and manage everything is so much higher. So it's really important that we're not trying to absolutely throw everything out, but if we can just have nudges in the right direction, everything feels much more achievable.
Oh, absolutely. A little helping hand or a little thing that can aid you to do something a bit smarter or faster or easier, totally. For me, I know it's small, but for one of the things that we do is get online shopping. And again, and gusto, like a kind of a blend of those things means we're not arguing about what we need to cook.
Yeah.
We know it's arriving at some point in time if it doesn't get nicked from
Yeah.
our doorstep. And we know that it's fresh ingredients. So at least we'll try and eat well if in amongst the chaos, like, you know, we can't think of those things ourselves.
Yeah. And I think you had a COVID mix thrown in as well. So you were part of that cohort that had to manage that. How did you guys manage work and caring for your daughter at that point?
It was such an extraordinary time, wasn't it? And my version of that is on the day that I was due to go back to work and take on like a really exciting new role for me, kind of running an area of the business where I am now. Lockdown came. So I'd stressed out so much about how are we going to go back to work? What's day one going to look like? What am I going to wear? You know, all the things you obsess about when things are normal. And then on the Friday, they said, nursery shut down. You're not going to work. We're all working from home. Go. And so, it's just, these are the things that ground us in the reality of what's important, aren't they? Because you can plan for all this shit and then that happens and you're like, okay, those plans are out the window.
Yeah.
So let's get real. Like, what do you actually need to do? And I think for me, my husband is the hero in this story because he was immediately like, don't worry, I'm going to kind of work out how we'll manage our child. So didn't have the nursery thing in the mix. He went on furlough. He is lucky enough to run his own business. So that was part of that. But that was a massive hit for their business in terms of him not being able to be present all the time.
Yeah.
But he did that so that I could then step into this new role and actually feel like I had the space to at least embrace it and not be overwhelmed by it. And it was quite a strange time because we were in a 1-bedroom flat and you had, he's taken some hilarious videos of me in work mode. You know, here I am tapping at my computer, whereas him and my daughter on the side, like playing on the carpet, like doing their thing whilst I'm being like serious and on my computer. So there's that moment where he was seeing me in work mode all the time, which is obviously like slightly embarrassing as well. But at the same time, you know, I couldn't help but feel pretty proud that we were just like figuring it out. There were many frantic moments where I'd be like, you need to get into the other room because you're screaming and I'm trying to do this thing over here. And it was before that video where the nanny
BBC
moment
guy,
exactly. So like none of that was yet established in terms of the code of conduct of your kids and your family just being in the background as normal. But it was an amazing time because, like I said, he stepped up. He was an absolute hero to support me. And then he got to see what it was like for me on maternity leave too. So he got to really understand the rhythm of our 9-month-old child then, what she likes, what she doesn't like, how difficult it is sometimes just to relax into play. Like I found that very hard to get used to as a parent, but now I'm into it. I adore it. It's one of my favourite things about being a parent, but it's taken me some time to relax into being able to play. And he had that same learning experience too. So a lot of appreciation on each side that I think came from that COVID experience too, which again, I'm really grateful for in many ways. Yeah,
so it kind of gave you both a different perspective of what might have looked different if that hadn't have happened.
100%, definitely.
How did it change how he sort of saw the load and this concept of the modern load and how we're trying to do it all? Do you think it shaped some of his views on that?
I think it did. And I think, however, I think the modern load with a small baby, it is relatively small looking back. And again, I wouldn't have said that at the time. It feels like an absolute head fuck at the time. But once you get used to it, you realise, you know, baby's pretty happy if you make sure you go out with a nappy, you've got access to banana and some water and some milk maybe. Whereas now we're in the schools era and we've got 2 kids in different types of classes, so different types of needs. The modern load is mental. And I don't think he appreciates that because I'm always bleating onto him about it. So I can tell he's not quite understanding what I want him to. Or he is actually, and he's just choosing to ignore it, which could be the other side of it. But no, he's a good guy. It's just these things that have thrown at us from that kind of administrative perspective are naturally more suited to someone like me who's in an office environment. He works in a very different environment. So the idea that he's like able to respond to admin and stuff, that's just not possible for him. Equally, like I do think we've talked a bit around this default parenting thing. So actually now we're talking about it, I can see how I default do a whole load of stuff, which if I was really sensible, I'd sit down and be like, can you take that child's admin and I'll take this child's admin? But we haven't quite got there yet. So you've reminded me to do that.
And it's very apt that we're having recording this podcast today on World Book Day, which is a thing in and of itself. Did you nail the outfits this morning?
Do you know what? I actually did, because I got them to try them on last night and they were both happy with them, which has never happened before. But the thing about World Book Day is, there's just a lot of pressure, isn't there? A couple of my school friends have managed to get their kids' outfits to go viral, so I think that's my pinnacle of success for World Book Day. So I'm never going to meet that. But no, ours is tomorrow for some reason. So hopefully they'll be happy and well dressed for tomorrow.
I think that what you've said there is the perfect version of the modern load, in that not only are we talking about doing World Book Day, we're actually talking about how can we be more ambitious and go viral and be the best book day of all time.
So why do we do this to ourselves?
Why do we do it to ourselves?
It is absolutely bonkers. Yeah. No,
So
I'm happy with it. One of them's going in with a little pig nose as Peppa Pig. I think that will do.
Yeah, it's fine. We've spoken a bit about ambition, but how has becoming a parent shaped your ambition, changed it? How's it evolved over time?
I think parenthood has been the best thing that could happen to my ambition, because I think growing up, I was sort of ambitious. I'm going to say for the sake of it, I'm not sure how heavily I mean that. I mean, I was ambitious, but without any necessarily purpose beyond wanting to do the very best I could in whatever I was doing, and as a byproduct, become financially stable, like we've discussed.
Yeah.
Whereas I think becoming a parent has put into perspective what that really means for me. And the reality is, at the same time as I'm still as ambitious as I was before, it's not actually the thing that matters to me the most. And that's been super useful, because I can go into conversations far more pragmatically than I could before, because simply I've got a better perspective on what really matters or not. At the same time, I think it does give you a really amazing new reason to get out of bed and do that thing you do at work every day, both because you believe in it and because then you get financially rewarded for it, which ultimately leads to being able to care for your family. So it's a real dichotomy of it's given me perspective, it's given me the ability to focus on what I really care about and not sweat the small stuff outside of that. But also it's given me a lot more purpose. So in turn, that sort of led to more ambition at the same time.
Yeah. How do you think that ambition sort of interacts with the modern load and everything we're carrying? How does it play into that? And I guess I'm interested in what that looks like for us versus what our parents had to contend with. How is life different?
Oh, life is so different. And we're talking about ambition there as a sort of a privilege part of why we go to work. I think the main difference for me is I don't really see it as a choice in the families that I'm surrounded by, whether it's one parent working or two. It doesn't mean you have to have super ambition in those jobs or careers, but I think it's now a necessity for both parents to work, which is the reason why the modern load is an absolute headfuck on top of that, because you both need to work and you still have all the parenting to do. Oh, and by the way, the expectations at school and from work are now 24/7, and they're in your inbox, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And there's a WhatsApp group where all the mums are telling you all the things you should have remembered or not remembered. So I think it's profoundly different to how we were growing up. I think the needs of children, though, have not changed. And that's sort of the thing that I worry sometimes I forget, which is this isn't really about me going to work. It's about how am I bringing up my children and making them feel safe and secure and happy. And I sometimes forget that balance. Even as I was leaving to come here this morning, one of my littlest ones was saying, "Mummy, don't go on the train." And, they do that to be little sneaky chops. But at the same time, you are a bit like, why is she, if I think about her, why is she saying it? It's really she just wants more cuddles, because then she goes to school all day and I don't see her. And in fact, tonight I won't see her because I'm travelling again. So it's sort of, I think parenting's profoundly changed. The expectations at work and home have profoundly gone up. Yeah. And therefore, I think it's a really different environment we're all operating in.
Yeah, I think that sort of systems and that structural economics world that we live in, where typically both parents do need to go to work just to make the numbers work. And we talk a lot about the pressure it puts on us, the modern load on us. But I think you raise a really important point there about like the pressure it puts on our kids and like the whole family and the strain and the impact it's having.
Definitely. I think I've sort of you asked me a question about my mum earlier, like did that inspire you? And I think I have certainly use that as my way to like justify how much I work. Like, I'll be inspiring to my girls and they'll grow up wanting this. And then sometimes I have to really rein myself back.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, is that what I want for them? Is that like the default that they should have? Like, am I giving them options, or am I telling them the only way to live in this world is to work hard and to graft I actually I'm lucky. My husband does something in the arts, so we're a really great contrast. I think, I hope. Because I don't want to put anything on them, really. I want them to just see what's out there in the world and take their choice.
Yeah.
But I am very aware that I'm setting this example of like, it's both good and bad, if you see what I mean. Like I'm setting this example of this is how you do it. Whereas I don't think what I'm doing is necessarily the only way, and certainly not the best or the only option for them.
Yeah. But even the fact that you're having to think about that is kind of pressure on yourself, and like that parenting's been named a public health crisis in the States, and it's based around this expectation piece that we put on ourselves because we've got this vision of how we think we should be doing it. And again, like we're working like we don't have kids, and parenting like we don't have jobs, and it's just there are only so many hours in the day. There's only so much like time and space in our heads that we can use for these things.
Yeah, I think I love that phrase that you've just used. Working like we don't have kids and parenting like we don't have jobs.
Yeah.
It's absolutely bonkers, really.
Yeah, something's got to give. It doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
So you were talking there about kind of how you're conscious of what you're modelling for the girls and what they see from you, and there isn't only one way to approach it. Are you intentional in terms of modelling for them what sort of roles look like, and who they can be and what they're responsible for when they hold that responsibility piece like you have?
Do you know what? I think I am conscious of it, but actually on a day-to-day basis, I'm really not thinking about it that much. But what I was, one of your questions before, I was also saying in my mind, like the difference between parenting now is we're such conscious parents.
Yeah.
And I think that's good and bad. I got a bit of psychosis in the early days of having my first child. And in that time, I ended up in the middle of the night writing all these like excerpts of books. And one of them was around how we go back to being instinctive parents rather than such conscious parents. And it's because I felt even when I had my first child, like you're trying to figure out these things and put systems around them and all of this, when actually you just need to use your gut feeling and look at your child and see what their cry means. But I found that really hard to tap into those instincts. So in that same way, like I think it's good to be conscious, and I am trying to role model something, but actually I'm actually just trying to role model being kind, having fun and working hard. I think those are the things we talk about in our family. And then not too much else, because otherwise I think I would drive myself absolutely mad.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot, isn't it? So going back to what you were saying before about we've got this like 24/7 digital world, we've got Slack in our bathrooms in a way that we didn't have before. Do you think our parents had quieter heads than we do now?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's no doubt that, I work in tech and I have done for nearly 20 years. And my passion for technology has never sort of dwindled. And in fact, I've been part of promoting how do you get tech everywhere to help solve bigger problems and make life better for lots of people in whichever organisation I've worked for. But the reality is we've sort of sleptwalked into having screens everywhere, communication at every touch point. And like I said, that 24/7 expectation around us. And that is something that our parents see us having. And I think what's nice for that generation, and to put it into context, my parents are in their 80s, for that generation, they can see some of the good it brings. So, my mum loves playing solitaire in bed at night. But the reality is it's solitaire. It's not like a phone call from your CEO saying X, Y, and Z when you're just about to, put the kids to bed. So it's profoundly different because of phones, and then when phones became smartphones, and when smartphones became supercomputers in your pocket, the world that we operate in is very, very different. So I think they had an ability to be more present, but I don't think they were conscious. So there's lots of things. And again, I'm slightly jealous of this actually of my parents, but I don't think it made for the best parents. I think they did a lot of stuff by instinct, and I think there weren't any rules, and they didn't share with each other the best way to do X, Y, and Z, and they didn't have this vision for what perfect parenting looked like. I think they had less rules, less expectations, less visibility of what everyone else was doing. So they fundamentally were just more able to be more present, more in their mode of operating, which may or may not have led to Philippa Perry's book, which is all about how to not do what your parents did when you were growing up. So
yeah, there's a lot of that, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. You and I are both tech enthusiasts. We've been in the tech world for a long time. Obviously, now I've got a tech startup, but sometimes we're the worst for it as well. Have you put any boundaries in place to kind of shield yourself from bringing the tech home too much?
Oh, I'm obsessed with this on so many levels. I think I realised, actually, it was after the birth of my second child where I realised I had a heightened sense of anxiety after having the girls, because I think you become more aware of threats and things all around you. Naturally, it's part of the kind of science, the matrescence, isn't it, after having kids. And so my phone was actually really not doing me a good service. Like I think those messages all the time would just heighten anxiety, even if they were like nothing messages. That just wasn't good for me. So for nearly 3 years now, I've been being much better with things like leaving my phone downstairs. Absolute game changer when you go to bed. I don't look at my phone first thing in the morning. I don't use it for an alarm. I've got it as an alarm clock. And it's actually just changed my sense of well-being at home. It also means that I can actually just talk to my husband, even though he's on his phone. So it's not always an equal balance. But there's lots of things like that. I've also been a huge advocate of the smartphone-free childhood from its first inception, and worked a little bit with those founders, Daisy and Joe, when they were first setting it up, because what they have done and that organisation to raise awareness around the impacts of phones on children, and then as a byproduct, I think all of us becoming more conscious around our use of screens is phenomenal. And I'm really grateful to that movement for, I think, how it's going to change the face of our classrooms and how we actually use screens in schools, which I couldn't be more grateful for. Yeah,
they've done an incredible job. I'm really excited to see the shift back to analogue there. And I certainly feel really passionate about having tech taking the strain and doing everything, but really in the background proactively with as little interaction from us, and just leave the humans to do the humaning that only we can do.
Oh, so much. And I think we will get there. I think the advent of AI, whilst it's talked about in quite scary terms, I think what it could mean is that we can remove the touch point from being about screens, and it can be way more voice activated or automated in the background, or through sort of HQ hubs, tech hubs, so that actually we can all get back to hopefully being more human.
Fingers crossed. Cool. So I like to end on this question because I think work and home are two sides of the same coin. So tell me your first job, how much you earned per hour, and what it taught you about work.
Oh, my first job, Soph, I've told you I've had so many random jobs. One of the first ones I can remember, which is also one of the worst, was I used to work in a warehouse with one of my mates as a summer job. And our job was, as the furniture came in from big events like Ascot or Wimbledon, we would be responsible for taking the cushions out of their covers and cleaning all the covers in these huge, enormous washing machines. And I think we were paid about £6 an hour, cash in hand. I can't quite remember, but it wasn't.
It feels pretty good.
Well,
for
it
the
wasn't.
time.
It wasn't too bad considering I was working with one of my best mates. But this was so mind-numbingly boring, and it was hours. You know, we'd do 8 hours to get our weekend kind of cash. And we would fall asleep literally within the cushions because it was, I can't even tell you, the monotony of doing it was just so boring. But I think it did teach me a few things because, just do what you need to do to get cash. It was absolutely fine. B, get to know your colleagues. There were so many different types of people working in this warehouse, and actually looking back, quite a lot of folks who'd come over from Eastern Europe and weren't necessarily allowed to be there. And but what was amazing is we got to talk to them and understand their experiences, where they lived, what they were doing to earn cash to send home. And I absolutely loved that, just that opportunity to meet different people, but ultimately work in a environment with them where you all got a collective goal to do whatever it was. So whether it was when the lorries come in and you have a bit of a chat with the lorry guys and you're like, can you help me bring this out because I can't quite carry this, like that idea of working together as a team with whoever is in your colleague sphere at the time was awesome. And what else did I learn? Just having fun. So because I was with my mate, there was actually, in the most dire, boring set of circumstances, actually you can still have a laugh. And so a lot of that, I think, I actually do carry that into my workplace quite a lot. Like, especially if you're not necessarily in a job where you're saving lives every day, so it's not so serious and important. Like, how can you bring lightness and fun into the workplace?
Yeah. And how were you, what did that teach you about wanting to stay in that type of job, or you were always on the hunt for the next best thing?
I was always on the hunt for the next best thing, but I definitely did like the taste of that independence we talked about when you earn cash. So I think I quite quickly also was looking outwardly at temp jobs and realising that there were other types of jobs where you could do data entry and get paid not £6 an hour, but £15 an hour, which at the time I remember being extraordinary. And when I was younger, my mum had let me use one computer game, which was this thing where it would teach you touch type. So I was actually very good at data entry. So I quickly sniffed out the higher value for paid work and went and worked as a kind of data entry person for Ann Summers of all places.
Wow, there you go. You heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you look at yourself as a parent now, do you see that same instinct coming through, like hustling, having fun, teamwork, being in it together, like all the things you mentioned for work?
Yeah, all of that, definitely. And I think coming from a broad consulting background, I do then try and translate that. Not that I tell my husband this, but I do try and translate that into some of the things we do at home. So, we have, actually, this is quite funny. We've got a set of rules in our house, and it is be kind, work together, have fun. And what you'll notice about this sign in my house is that my daughter at one point, when she was having a massive tantrums, actually ripped it up. So it's like we've got these really cute rules, and then it's got sellotape all over it because it doesn't always go to plan. But there are some ideas around kind of leading teams and working together and being collaborative and creating space to have feedback moments as a family that we do try and do. Definitely not perfect. Don't do it all the time. Yeah. I do try little things like that.
Yeah, nice. Love it. Thank you so much for joining today and being really open with your experiences. It was so interesting to hear about how all of this plays out for you and the reality of modern day life, straddling a big career and also doing an amazing job at home. So thank you for making the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sophie. It's been great fun.
That was Antonia, and this is The Modern Load. Real conversations about modern parenting, work, identity, and everything we carry in between. If this conversation resonated, please share. Tune in for our next episode, coming soon.